There it goes. Okay. I'd like to begin by saying that tonight's sermon is not about money. Okay? Just want that out there, okay? It's about something that's a whole lot more important than money. And if you've been in church for as long as a lot of you all have been, I'm sure that you've heard a whole lot of sermons based on the talents, on the passage that we're going to be looking at this evening. So because of that, and I've heard, I can't tell you how many sermons on the talents. So I'm trying to come at this from maybe a little different angle than what you've had before. Maybe point out some things that you might not have heard before. Because let's face it, I'd hate for you all to get bored and start falling asleep on me here tonight, okay? We're going to be in Matthew chapter 25, if you want to turn there. Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30 is what we'll be reading here in just a little bit. This parable teaches 4 crucial principles about how to invest your life, and we're going to take a look at those this evening. But also in this parable, there are 3 little words that have the power to determine success or failure in any aspect of your life. 3 little words that define the difference between the good and faithful servant and the wicked and lazy servant. And we're going to take a look at those 3 little words here when we get to the end of the message, okay? But first, I want us to take a look at this parable and look at the 4 principles that Jesus teaches about how to invest your life. So I'm going to read the whole parable. I'm going to read verses 14 through 30. And again, I'm reading out of the Holman translation, the HCSB or just the CSB. They've taken to dropping the Holman part of it and just calling it the Christian Standard Bible, which I don't understand why, but anyway. But here we go. For it is just like a man going on a journey. He called his own slaves and turned over his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability. Then he went on a journey. Immediately, the man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. But the man who had received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. Look, I've earned you 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over the few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. Then the man with 2 talents also approached. And he said, Master, you gave me 2 talents. Look, I've earned you 2 more talents. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. Then the man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, Master, I know you. You're a difficult man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. Look, you have what is yours. But his master replied to him, You evil, lazy slave. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers. And when I returned, I would have received my money back with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing slave into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, I want to give just a real quick word of explanation here, okay? If you had 10 biblical different commentaries and you looked up the word talent in them, you would end up with 10 totally different measures or amounts of money. Because the commentaries I looked at, nobody could come up with how much a talent was back then or how much it would be today. There's really no agreement on that amongst biblical scholars, a lot of biblical scholars. The bottom line that I've come to understand is that even one talent was a lot of money. Okay? That's all you really need to know. The master went away on a journey. The story doesn't tell us how long of a journey it was. It just says that he was gone a long time. Long enough for the servants to have time to make the money that they were given work for them. But again, Jesus isn't talking about money for us. Okay? He's talking about how we invest our lives. So here's what I want you to pick up from this parable. Number one, you'll be given opportunities according to your ability. Now, not everyone gets the same opportunity because not everyone has the same ability. Not everyone gets the same opportunity because not everyone is capable of handling the same responsibility. At one point, when I was I'm thinking I was around 3rd grade or so when I was growing up, my mom thought it would be a good idea if I would go out and play Little League baseball. Okay? Now, I know it's hard to imagine considering the fine physical specimen that I am right now. Okay? But I was horrible at baseball. Honestly, I was horrible at any sport. I just was not athletic. I was clumsy. I was very accident prone. Sports and clumsiness don't go together. Okay? Now, if there was an event for falling or tripping or having to go to the emergency room to get x-rays, I would have been gold medal winner. Okay? But I just was not an athletic kind of child. Okay? I didn't practice. I was scared of getting hit by the ball when it was thrown to me. And so I would the ball would be coming and then I would get out of the way. Because I didn't want to get hit by the ball. Okay? So I didn't catch well as the fact that I didn't really hit the ball very well. But there was thing that I was great at on the Little League team. I was great at keeping the bench from flying away if one of the Kansas winds had come through. Okay? Now, I wasn't the only one who was good at that. There were several of us that were very good at sitting on the bench. Okay? But we weren't any good at playing the game. And the coach let us know that we weren't really good. And he'd tell us, if you got better, if you get better at this, then we'll put you in. Now, fast forward 50 years. I worked with a pastor who began coaching Little League. And I started going to some of the games. And I heard a completely different perspective. I don't know if parents have changed over the years, or if kids have changed, or if the concept of competition has changed, but I frequently heard people express the opinion that everyone on the team should have equal playing time. Whether it's a kid who lives and breathes the sport, or a kid who doesn't know the difference between a double play and double bubble gum. Okay? Everyone should get the same playing time, regardless of their ability and regardless of their commitment. That's the way it is today. You may be able to get away with that in Little League. But that's not really how life works. Everyone doesn't get equal opportunities because everyone doesn't have equal abilities. Everyone's not able to handle equal amounts of responsibility. And everyone doesn't share an equal level of commitment. So, in life, we get opportunities to match our abilities and our level of commitment. That's because, and this is a principle that I want you to pick up on here, God will give you as much as He can trust you with. Jesus said in verse 15 here of Matthew 25, to one He gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. The master didn't love one servant more than he loved the others. He just recognized the difference in their abilities. Now, I'll tell you what we have a tendency to do. Instead of looking at the opportunities that God has given us, we sometimes look at the opportunities that He has instead given to other people. And rather than seizing the opportunities that are placed before us, we fret over what we don't have. Why didn't I have the same opportunities as that guy? Why couldn't I have been born into a rich family? Why couldn't I be a better athlete? Why couldn't I get into Harvard? Why couldn't I have been given a job with a Fortune 500 company? And on and on and on. And it comes down to this. God gives us opportunities according to our abilities. It's not your job to worry about what you don't have. It's your job to make the most of what you do have. When it comes to how you spend your life, you need to take an inventory of all that you have been given and ask yourself, am I investing it or am I burying it? I would guess that most of us probably feel like we're either the 2-talent guy or the 1-talent guy. Okay? Most of us probably don't feel like we're among the most gifted people in the world. At least I don't. Okay? The difference in what the 1-talent guy and the 2-talent guy had, what they started with, isn't really that much. Just 1 talent. Okay? But the difference in what they ended up with is substantial. Because one took what he had and invested it, while the other took what he had and buried it. God will give you as much as He can trust you with. And you're going to be given opportunities according to your ability. If He's chosen to give others more than He's given you, that's never an excuse to waste what it is that you've been given. Secondly, faithfulness always leads to a promotion. And a promotion always includes a bigger job description. Look at verse 21. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. He said this to the man who had been given 5 talents. And in verse 23, we see that he spoke the same exact words to the man who had been given 2 talents. Both were faithful with what they had. Both were promoted, and both were given more responsibility. Even though their original resources weren't an equal amount, their effort was equal, and their faithfulness was equal. The lesson here is that faithfulness pays off. Whether you're faithful with a little or a lot, you'll reap a reward. And whether you're faithful with a little or a lot, God is equally pleased. And here's the principle that I want you to pick up on. Being responsible always leads to more responsibility. A pastor once told me that if you want something to get done in the church, ask the busiest person you know, because they can handle the responsibility. Have you ever noticed how true that really is? People with tons of free time probably have it because they're either not willing or not able to get things accomplished. Whether you're hiring a contractor, a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant, the really good ones are busy. The not so good ones have nothing to do. And as you seek to invest your life, I want you to realize that the more faithful you are, the more responsibility you'll be given. And the busier you're going to become. We sometimes approach this the wrong way. We don't want a promotion a lot of times. We don't want more responsibility. In fact, sometimes we want less. When I was in youth ministry, I went to a national youth conference in Nashville one time. And while I was there, I talked to another youth leader who said, I hope my youth group doesn't grow anymore because I've got all that I can handle. Now, one thing I don't know if I've ever talked about this at all that much, but when I was a youth minister, I had the innate ability to take a youth ministry that had maybe 10 students in it and whittle it down to 3 or 4 really faithful ones. Okay? I was not gifted to be a youth minister. Okay? I would love to have had the problem that this guy had. But this guy had been faithful with a small group and had apparently done a great job, and the group was growing. The problem now was that he was beginning to feel a little overwhelmed. When it comes to how we spend our lives, we need to be aware that God is looking for us to be faithful in the little things that He's called us to do, so that He can reward us with even bigger things to do. Faithfulness always leads to a promotion, and a promotion always includes a bigger job description. Being responsible leads to more responsibility. The third thing that I want you to get out of this story is accomplishing a little is better than accomplishing nothing at all. My dad loves to play games. Loves to play games. As long as he wins. Growing up, when we'd go to his house on Friday or Saturday night, there were many times that he would have gotten, or his current wife had gone out to purchase a new board game or a new card game. And we'd play it. But if he didn't win, you'd never see that game again when you went over to his house. Okay? Now, I'm going to be honest with you here, okay? I don't go on diets. I don't do diets. One of the reasons that I don't go on diets is because I don't think I'm ever going to be able to stick with a diet. I love sweets way too much. I've known people who wouldn't try to get sober because they didn't think that they could maintain sobriety. And tragically, I've known people who wouldn't accept Christ because they didn't think that they could live the Christian life. And rather than fail, they decided they simply weren't going to try at all. That's exactly what the servant who received 1 talent thought. He thought, what if I take this money and I lose it all? It's safer to do nothing. And that's exactly what he did. Now, imagine if this servant had done something different. The other two servants doubled their money. But what if this servant had just put his money into some kind of a low-risk, low-return investment? When the master returned, he could have said, "Master, I know the other servants doubled their money, but I didn't do that well. Here's what I did. I put your money in the bank, and the amount has increased 20%. You gave me $5,000. Here's $6,000. What do you think the master would have said? That's it. Well done, thou good and faithful slave. The reason why the master was so angry at the servant who buried his talent was because he did nothing. He didn't even try. And that's why the master said to him in verses 26 and 27, "You evil, lazy slave, if you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers. And when I returned, I would have received my money back with interest." Even that small amount of effort would have been enough to please the master. So here's the final principle that I want you to pick up on. The only real failure in life is in giving up. In the church that I grew up in, one Sunday a man came down to the front to rededicate his life. He was a little slow mentally. He was just one of those guys who was a little slow, okay? And he always seemed to be down on his luck. On the ride home, my mom and I discussed his rededication, okay? And she mentioned that in the church that she had grown up in, there was a man who came down and rededicated his life every week. And my mom said that this gentleman made the commitment, or this gentleman made the comment at one point that maybe he should just give up. Which then brought on another large discussion between my mom and me. And she made the comment that you will never get to the point where God wants you to give up. And that stuck with me. If you want to experience the fullness of God in your life, you've got to keep trying and keep trying as many times as it takes. Some of you here today may be facing that temptation to give up. Maybe you've failed too many times already. Maybe you've convinced that you're never going to make it, and you're thinking, I should just cut my losses, bury my life in the sand, and forget about it. That's the worst kind of failure in the world. Because when you give up, you close the door on God changing you. When you give up, you close the door on God doing something miraculous. You may have squandered the opportunities that God has given you in the past. And there may be quite a bit of your life that's buried in the sand somewhere. If that's the case, get a shovel. Get to work. Unbury what's been buried and put it to use. Do what you can with what you have, because accomplishing a little is better than accomplishing nothing at all. The only real failure in life is in giving up. That's why the servant was called wicked and lazy. So don't give up. And next, the more you apply yourself, the better you get. In verses 28 and 29. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Each of us has been given certain opportunities, certain skills, certain resources to work with. The more you use them, the more you'll get. And here's the principle to remember when it comes to investing your life. Use it or lose it. If God has given you an opportunity and you don't use it, you're going to lose it. If God's given you a skill and you don't use it, you'll lose it. But on the other hand, if you use it, if you invest it, you'll experience growth. I love reading. Reading is one of my escapes. Reading novels, reading books. There are times that when I'm looking for a new book that I haven't read, I'll find an earlier written book by an author that I've really come to like. And then I begin to read it, and I'll discover that the character development isn't near as good as the other books that I've written by this author. The quirkiness and the humor that I've come to rely on in their writing just isn't there. And the reason is because in these earlier works, they hadn't totally developed the writing skills that they currently have. John, I just take a wild guess here and figure you probably like reading Louis L'Amour books. Absolutely. Probably read a whole lot of those books, haven't you? His earlier works, where they may have been good, they probably are not near as good as his later works, because he improved over time. Okay? And it's the same way in our lives. Whatever God has given you, you need to use it or lose it. The more you use it, the more it will increase. The less you use it, the less you'll have. Take a look at the things that you want to increase in your life, and then invest in those things. Do you want a great marriage? Invest in your marriage. Use it or lose it. Do you want to have a dynamic relationship with God and a useful ministry in His kingdom? Invest your life in building His kingdom. Use it or lose it. Now, I've talked tonight about 4 foundational principles, I guess you could say, that are crucial to building a life worth living. Here they are again. God will give you as much as He can trust you with. Being responsible leads to more responsibility. The only failure is in giving up, and use it or lose it. And now I want to close by taking just a few more minutes to look at those 3 little words that I mentioned earlier that are going to make all the difference in your life. You may already know the principles that I've talked about today. But if you don't know these 3 little words, your life will go nowhere. And those 3 little words are there in your notes, okay? But to find them, we're going to go back to verse 16, and I'm going to read this out of the NIV, okay? Because the NIV has these 3 little words in it, okay? The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. He went at once. He got started immediately. He was given a job to do, and he didn't procrastinate. He went at once and did it. Whatever it is that you need to accomplish, there's something that you can do today to get started on it. Whatever it is. If you need to take charge of your health, you can start that today. Go home and eat a salad. Go take a walk before you go to bed. If you need to make some changes in your personal life, you can read the first chapter of a book that you know that you've been needing to read. You can do that tonight. If you need to reconcile with someone in your life, you can make that first phone call tonight when you get home. It's still early when we get out. You can still call somebody or write that first letter. There might be some who need to get things straightened out with God. You've known for a long time that you need to do it, but you've been putting it off. He's giving you a chance to take that step. The servant who was given 5 talents was called good and faithful because he went at once and put his talents to work. And I'm challenging you to do the same thing. You know what you need to do. You need to do it today. You need to go at once. Take out your prayer sheets, if you would.